Come on! Yo, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the world, I am George Massey, glad, proud and privileged to be speaking to you because you are looking great. I am here today to speak about the EMOJI movie.
High five, don't do it. Don't you do it, it's already been in there once.
The EMOJI movie has been so negatively anticipated that I have to take a moment to talk about the negative hype that this movie has received. Because some time ago the trailer came out and it was perhaps the most hated, most disliked trailer for a movie on YouTube. Perhaps the most disliked trailer that I have ever seen. And I watched the trailer maybe 6 months ago and I thought, that doesn't look that bad. Why is everybody hating on it? The visuals are good, the concept doesn't look so different to something like Mr. Men, and people love Mr. Men. What is the big deal? They are taking the idea of emojis that have permeated our culture and they are turning it into a movie. And I thought, to be perfectly honest, even though everybody's ragging on this trailer and saying, oh my god, how terrible, what else are they going to think of next? I actually thought the movie looks like it might be quite good, and it became quite a big question in my mind. Why are people hating on this so much? And what I personally felt is that maybe people presumed that it was going to be awful and had a very clear detest for it before it even got released, simply because it resembled or reflected something in us, in my generation and the younger generation. It reflected something about ourselves that maybe we do not actually like, i.e. the phone and social media is so all-consuming that when you see it, it makes you think of this thing that is essentially an addiction that so many people are susceptible to. There is a very common saying that that which you dislike most about other people is often in fact that which you dislike most about yourself. And I almost feel like that happened with the release of this movie. People watched this trailer, they saw people on phones, they saw a movie about phones, and they thought, oh, how terrible, how awful. Because to be perfectly honest, the concept isn't that bad, the script doesn't look that bad, the visuals look excellent. Actually, a movie like Captain Underpants came out and is very enjoyable, very entertaining, but certainly doesn't have the money, the colour, and the quality of the visuals of the EMOJI movie. So what is it that people inherently dislike about this film? So that being said, I thought, well, I might actually like the movie. But I didn't make a video about it because in the past, Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters, had a similar backstory in that the trailer came out and everybody hated the trailer and everyone was against it. And I watched that trailer too and thought, well, to be perfectly honest, it doesn't look that bad. Let's wait and see, it might actually be good. Then I went to see the new Ghostbusters with the girls and I hated it. In fact, I hated it more than most people and most reviewers. So I thought, okay, actually, everybody who anticipated that it was going to be bad was correct, and I was wrong. I was willing to put up my hands and say, you were right, you could tell from the trailer it was a right piece of shit, and I was the one in the wrong here. Now with the EMOJI movie, I went to see it yesterday, and I thought, okay, is everyone else going to be right? Am I going to be wrong? And no. It's not a shit film. It's not a bad film. I don't care what anybody says, and frankly I'm shocked by the level of hatred that it is receiving from popular online film reviewers and other such people. First of all, it's a kids film and the demographic, the target audience are little kids, so I don't know why there is so much hatred being thrown at it from grown adults. Like, Jesus Christ, it's a movie made for children. Do children like it? Well, in the cinema where I went to see it, there were lots of kids and they all seemed to be having a really good time. Now, from the perspective of an adult, me, somebody who's incredibly critical of cinema, it's perfectly good. I genuinely enjoyed this movie. It was well written, it was imaginative, very imaginative. One thing that I particularly like about the movie is that the writers very clearly tried to get as much out of the concept of a smartphone as possible. It's like they looked at it and said, well, if we could put characters inside that phone, like Tron, like taking a human and putting him into the video game, how much can we actually do with it? How many different scenarios can we come up with? How many inside jokes can we come up with? And they squeezed it like a sponge to get all of the juice out of it that they possibly could, like no stone left unturned. There are so many different places and avenues that these characters go within the smartphone universe, and it just feels like they made a genuine effort to get as much out of it as possible, unlike, say, well-known but awful video game movies where they have almost no effort to actually put the game on the screen in a tangible way. There are so many examples of video game to film adaptations that have like nothing really to do with the video game world. It's just like the name of the movie is the same as the game, but that's kind of the only similarity. But in this, they really made a point of saying, well, how does a smartphone work? What kind of apps do kids have? What would it be like if you literally were going inside it in Tron fashion? And the story is kind of similar to Tron. It's just that instead of humans going inside a microchip, this is the little emoji characters on the phone breaking out of like WhatsApp and going into all of the other apps, which is a really cool idea. Not dissimilar even to something like Inner Space, where somebody gets shrunk down into the human body. And I feel that it's interesting because if this was a movie where real people were sucked into the phone, I just have a feeling that even if it was exactly the same in every other way, it would be really successful and people would really like it.
Look who just sent me a text.
Addie McAllister?
What should I say?
Just play it cool.
Welcome to the world inside your phone.
And the way that it is structured reminded me actually of Reboot, the original CGI kids show. I think the first ever CGI kids show.
I come from the net, through systems, peoples, and cities, to this place, mainframe.
They would have to enter games that would come down from mysterious places up above.
They say the user lives outside the net and inputs games for pleasure. No one knows for sure, but I intend to find out. Reboot!
And it was really, really cool in Reboot. I imagine the creators of this looked at that and thought, hey, that's a good idea, let's do something similar. And also, it looks great. I don't care what anyone says. If anyone tells you that this movie doesn't look great, they are talking out of their arse. They are going with the herd, they are going with everybody else because everybody said, oh, it's bad, and they just all have this one singular, unanimous voice. Nobody seems to have any kind of individual opinion on this. If you look at all of the big film reviewers online, not one of them can actually seem to tell you anything genuinely bad about the movie. They're just like, yeah, I didn't like it, yeah, it wasn't good, blah, 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 blah. They have nothing to say about the script, nothing to say about the visuals, nothing really to say about the characters. They seem unable to criticize it in the way that a film reviewer, a film critic should be criticizing something. You can't just sit back and say, it wasn't good, it sucked, I hated it, and then explain none of the reasons why you hated it. So what is good about the movie? Number one, the visuals. They look great. Number two, the imagination is great. Reminded me even a little bit of Captain N. Different kind of vibes, but the original Captain N 80s kids cartoon series about the boy being sucked into his TV whilst playing in NES, there's a little bit of similarity between that. It's not as cool as that, but it is good. The other thing is, it's funny. It's genuinely funny. Like, the writers were conscious of the fact that kids are a nightmare with their phones. The film begins and says, you know, kids are unable to speak to each other nowadays. They are losing the ability to communicate. They can't even form sentences this generation, so they are speaking to each other with emojis. It's not like the movie comes from the perspective of writers who are unable to write because they are infatuated and wrapped up in this digital mainframe themselves. Is people who are somewhat on the outside of it and saying, hey, this is a problem with kids today. They can't talk to each other. And that is the perspective and the avenue that the film goes down. The moral is good, and I feel like because people seem to have this wall up before they even are willing to actually pay attention to what they are watching, they're just sort of like, oh, it's a movie about emojis and it's probably trying to sell you a phone and whatever. And it's really not, because you don't need to sell any more smartphones. This isn't like Captain N, which was selling Nintendo products. It is not a product placement film because I'm pretty sure that everyone sitting in the audience watching it already had a smartphone. You're not going to sell anything new with this film.
Tell me you weren't laughing just now. What if you get sent out on the phone making the wrong face?
Dad, I'll make the right face. Then I would finally fit in.
Sweetie, you're so handsome when you make that face. I think he's ready, Mel.
The film revolves around this single character whose job it is to maintain one expression and never change his mood and always be seen as this one type of person. And the point of the film is very obvious and very relevant, I think, especially to younger people, because I think we all are very aware of young kids who try to fit into certain groups. Like they say, oh, I'm the emo group, or I'm the goth group, or I am going to be with the kids who listen to hip-hop music or dance music, or I'm the hippie kid, whatever. People are always trying to find out where they fit, and they often use exterior things to show the world who I am on the inside. I'm going to wear these clothes so that you know I'm this kind of a person. And the reality, of course, is that that is somewhat silly, because as a human being, you go through various different moods and feelings, and you can change from minute to minute and day to day. If you were to look at it from the perspective of, say, job titles, you can look at a train driver, and when you're a little kid, your parent might say to you, that's Mr. Train Driver, that's Mr. Milkman, that's Mr. Postman, but of course these are just titles, they are names. A train driver is not just a train driver, he's a human being. He's probably a father, a brother, a son, maybe he likes movies, maybe he's an avid video game player. The same with a postman, a milkman, or anything else. A title does not determine who a person is, and yet for some reason younger people frequently have this desire to have some kind of title, to be a certain kind of person, as if they are going to be that way eternally. And the point of the movie is very clear. Don't even bother trying to just be one way, because that's not who you are, that's not who anybody is, and ultimately it's just going to screw you up if you spend your life trying to be one way all the time, putting on a face, a mask, a facade for those around you, to impress those around you or to appeal to those around you. Is silly. Just be yourself. That's the point of the film. It was obvious that that was the point of the film. I knew that was the moral before I even watched the movie. It was very, very clear. And yet I have not heard one reviewer ever even mention it. It's like it just passed them by and they were like, oh, it's just there to sell you stuff. It isn't. There's no way it's to sell you stuff, because we've all already got smartphones. Lastly, what is good about it is it does feel like it is a well-loved project. Like the people who worked on it had a lot of love for it and tried to make it into the best possible thing that they could. It doesn't feel like it was a lazy project that was rushed and shoved out into the mainstream to just make a quick buck. It genuinely feels like the people who were on it got together and they tried to kind of wring it like a towel and say, how much can we get out of this film? Can we get? How many jokes can we get? How many little clever inside jokes can we get? How many things can we do that'll make us laugh because we can relate to all of these little annoyances when it comes to PCs and technology and smartphones? How many of those things can we get it into the movie? And in that regard, it feels like a lot of work and ingenuity and creativity and imagination went into the movie. It's not the best thing ever, but to be perfectly honest, people are comparing it to movies in a negative way. They're saying it's just like Wreck-It Ralph. It's all round better than Wreck-It Ralph. Wreck-It Ralph, considering what Wreck-It Ralph is based on, Wreck-It Ralph being based on the golden age of retro gaming, it does not encompass the golden age of gaming hardly at all. It's like Wreck-It Ralph begins in an arcade, and a kind of 80s arcade, and it looks amazing. You think, oh wow, this is great. We're going to get Street Fighter 2 and Mario and Rocket Knight Adventures and Star Fox, and we're going to get all this amazing stuff in this movie, and you get none of it. You get it for like 5 minutes, and then the movie just grinds to a halt as you get a fake Mario Kart from beginning to end. That is not capitalizing on all of those resources and potential. It doesn't capitalize on the potential that it has. At least this movie does capitalize very much on what it has. It goes through all of the kind of popular phone apps, or at least enough of them, and makes them into a coherent movie that increasingly gets more and more interesting from start to finish. Anyway, I've said enough about it. It's basically Tron in the present day. So instead of people getting sucked into an 80s computer, it is people being sucked essentially into a phone, except that instead of people, it is the phone characters. Just going from one app to the next. Now, what I didn't like about it, some of the later music in the film I didn't love. End credit music, didn't like at all. But some of the music was excellent, especially early on. Some of the audio made for the film is really excellent. But there's one thing, there is a way that the moral is presented between a boy and a girl in the real world, not in the phone world. It's the boy who's using the phone. And there's a certain way that he connects with the girl. And I really hated that scene because in one single line, it could have been so much better. It's just a way that he uses an emoji to get the girl's attention. And that is really bad. But I can forgive it because to me the main character of the film is not the boy holding the phone, it is the emoji on the phone. And he's the one whose story we are supposed to pay attention to. Now, one thing I will say that maybe would have made the masses appreciate the film more, I don't know, is that if in the ending of the film the phone had stopped working so that the boy and the girl have to speak to each other because he no longer has the ability to communicate to her with emojis, that would have been a better ending, really. It could have been, oh, the phone went off, so now I have to speak to this girl. That would have been a better ending. It would have been nice if they encompassed that once in a while it's good to turn the phone off when you really want to communicate with someone. But phones can be used as a tool to help you as well. But that is just an aside. I like the way it was depicted. I like the way it was told. I like the way it came to its conclusion. And overall I just liked it. It was fun. It was creative. I think it was so much more creative than so many films like Shrek, for example. Shrek is obviously from a book. Okay, it's not original, and I saw the first one in the cinema as a kid, and I did not find it particularly interesting or fun or funny at all. And to this day, I'm not a fan of that movie. I don't know why it's so popular, and people seem to love it. And then a movie like this comes along that is very creative, very imaginative, looks very beautiful. The characters go to all kinds of different places. It's almost like a whole kids' TV series crammed into one movie. And they work. And it works. And it's fun. And it angers me, it genuinely angers me that people just have this negative stance on it when they haven't even seen it, and it's like they've gone to the cinema and they're like, I'm gonna hate this movie, and I honestly feel like it's like the Emperor's New Clothes, where everyone's just hating it because everybody thinks they should hate it, and everyone's too afraid to say, actually, this bit was kind of good, or actually I kind of like this, or actually that kind of made me laugh. That's how it comes across. It just comes across like people are afraid to say, actually, I thought it was okay, you know, it was quite good. Actually, it was pretty good. Anyway, that's how I feel. What do you feel? Are you with the rest? Do you think it's 1% on Rotten Tomatoes and it deserves that? Do you think it's one of the worst films ever made and it should be banned and it should be taken away from humanity like it never existed, like it's a blemish, a smear upon our history? If that's what you think, leave it in the comments, because I don't think so. Maybe you can convince me. But you probably won't.
That's our user, Alex.
We have an incoming text! We are go for meth!
Who, me?
What's he doing?
He's making the wrong face!
Huh?
What the heck?
Anyway, that's me, you're you, and if you're addicted to the smartphone, I suggest turning it off for an hour and a half to watch a movie like the Emoji Movie. Chances are that going to see the Emoji Movie for 2 hours with a group of friends is a better use of your time than using your smartphone for 2 hours. What do you think? Well, whatever. I liked it. I think you worked that out already. Peace.